All right, everybody, welcome in to Two Countries, Two Americas, All Sports. This is episode 67 of the only sports podcast in the world that talks about both American and Brazilian sports. I'm Nick Hill, live as always from Chattanooga, Tennessee, of the United States. And joining me from down in Americana, Sao Paulo, Brazil, is Gustavo Tomazeli. Gus, how are you doing here on this Tuesday?
Doing good, doing good. First show of March, so have a lot talk about. Definitely a lot of basketball in North America. A lot of soccer here down in South America, as the state championships almost done with their. We can see regular season moving to the playoffs, and and in college basketball, both men's and women's, it's already it's basically playoff this time. It's not full March Madness yet, but definitely a lot of conference championships.
Oh, absolutely. All the women tournaments at this point are basically completed. I believe there's only a handful that haven't completely finished up play, and of course, a lot of the mid majors and then on the men's side have also completed their tournaments. But there's still a lot of the major tournaments left to go this week. So lots of basketball. Obviously, all the college basketball junkies, the John Rice Steins of the world, are in heaven right now because this is March, and college basketball junkies do not sleep in March. So we're actually going to start on the women's side of things today because we want to start off talking about the Lady Vols. And I think a big theme for the Lady Vols this year, they were preseason ranked number 4, but they've really struggled this year against top tier competition. Heading into the SEC tournament last week in Greenville, they were 0-8 versus ranked opponents. They've lost basically every single big game they played. Now, on the flip side, they were really good in their other um, games throughout the year, but they really struggled in those top games against top opponents. But they got what I easily thought was easily their best win of the season on Saturday night in Greenville, South Carolina, against the Louisiana State Tigers, Kim Mulkey and Angel Reese. 69-67, and this was a game where the Lady Vols were trailing by 17 points, and it was an insane comeback, and really it was off the backs of Rakea Jackson and Jordan Horston, who really throughout that entire SEC tournament were just carrying the team on their back. And to me, it really seems like those two are going to determine how far the Lady Vols are going to go in this postseason, because Rakea Jackson against LSU had 26, Jordan Horston had 17, and the vast majority of those for both players were in the second half. Now, the Lady Vols did come up short on Sunday against South Carolina. The Gamecocks won 74-58, but South Carolina is undefeated. Some experts say they might be the best team of all time, so I don't think there's really any shame in losing to them. So overall, I'd say that it was a great success for the Lady Vols. And I think that win Saturday was probably Kelly Harper's biggest win while in Knoxville. I think she desperately needed that because she was getting some heat throughout the year because of some of the performances against the teams like UConn and, after the first loss to LSU. And it's just, people expect the Lady Vols to be a top tier team. And honestly, they're playing like a team. If they get the right bracket, I think they can make a deep run.
Yeah, I think it has been so long that Tennessee hasn't played up until the SEC tournament final. They always struggle. I remember when I covered a couple of years ago, they went to the semifinals, lost to South Carolina. But this win shows that this team sometimes struggles in the big games, but they can go head to head when it matters. I don't know how much this is going to translate into the women's tournament. I guess they're facing Toledo.
Yeah, well, at least that's the projection. So let's take a look at Charlie Kareem's bracketology. And I think the big question for me is, could they play their way into a top 16 seed? Because in the women's tournament, unlike in the men's tournament, if you're a top 16 seed, you get to host the first and second round. And of course, Tennessee, for many tournaments, has had this happen. Thompson Bowl Arena has hosted many games of the women's tournaments.
Yeah,
So
I've
right
been.
now,
I remember when my first year in Knoxville, they hosted back in 2015.
oh, absolutely. So let's take a look at what the bracket right now has. So right now, Tennessee is projected to be a fifth seed against Toledo. Um, I'm not going to pretend like I know a lot about these other teams because I don't. I'm going to have to do some research on some of these other teams. But right now, the number one seed would be Virginia Tech. And Virginia Tech is a team that Tennessee has played. Now, Virginia Tech did beat Tennessee in Knoxville, but it was a really close game. And I think the Lady Vols at that point in the season were nowhere near as um, cohesive as they are now. I could see Tennessee making a run in this bracket. I mean, Villanova, of course, is a decent team. You have LSU has fallen to a free seed there. That could be dangerous. Maryland's always a pretty good team. But honestly, as long to me as they avoid South Carolina, Connecticut, or Iowa, if they can avoid those free teams in the bracket, I think they could make a run. I really do. Now, I think when you get to potentially a really deep run, if you run into one of those teams, I don't see the Lady Vols beating them. But, you know, it just all depends about the path. It's all about that path.
And how much do you think hosting gonna matter? Because right now Tennessee would not be hosting; they would go to Villanova, Pennsylvania.
I don't. I mean, sure, you want to host, but I've never really found the women's environments to be that much of a deterrent. I mean, I remember a couple of years ago, the Lady Vols were like a 7 seed, and they went out to Tempe and they crushed Arizona State on their home court and made it all the way to the Elite Eight. So, in the way this Tennessee team is playing right now, I, I'm not scared of them going to Philadelphia to play Villanova. I mean, that just maybe being a little too confident, but I really do like what I'm seeing right now out of these Lady Vols because I really do think that they have the potential to make a deep run as long as Jackson and Horston really play well. And I think they need some help, from the Darbys of the world, from Hollingsworth, players like that. But those two, if they play at a high level, especially Rakea Jackson, I mean, she's averaging 20 points a game right now. And her efficiency, they showed this on the broadcast today, her efficiency versus her performance last year at Mississippi State is just so much better. And it really feels like that the offense has finally figured out what they need to do. And the only thing I really you can tell that we're missing is an interior presence because Tamara Key having health issues. Though she did also announce, just in a side note, that she is returning next year. That her health is improving and that she's progressing to be back on track to get back on the court next season, which would be great for the Lady Vols because they are truly missing. I think that's the one piece that the Lady Vols need to be truly a top 5 or 10 team like they were projected preseason. So overall, it's kind of interesting how the season has played out because at first the season looked like it was going to be very disappointing for the Lady Vols, but I think they've kind of recovered to. I think that's going to be just a season where it's not necessarily what you wanted, but if you go deep in March, all is forgiven. So a
Yeah,
huge tournament coming up.
and one thing I definitely want to mention to you, and you put on your liner talk about it, but how big is going to be if Chattanooga makes it past the first game and playing South Carolina.
Well, obviously, first of all, congratulations to the Lady Mocs. Uh, Getting back to the tournament the first time, I think it's like 6 or 7 years. I used to be in the tournament virtually every year, but they kind of fell off for a little bit. But they got a new coach, Sean Poppy, and he really has gotten that team turned around. And they controlled that entire title game against Wofford on Sunday afternoon. So congratulations to them. But right now, they are projected to be one of those playing teams against Southeast Louisiana. If they beat them, you get to play the undefeated South Carolina Gamecocks, and hey, I would love to see a UMBC there. That would be incredible. But hey, I don't know what I can even say. If the Chattanooga Lady Mocs upset South Carolina, I gotta do like a TikTok or something from UTC's campus. And we'll have to do a live reaction show from the Chattanooga campus if that happens.
Sounds good. Perfect. We have to do that. Call it in. So Nicholas Hill right now. I'm gonna put him on full screen. So what are we gonna do if the Lady Mocs defeat South Carolina?
If the Lady Mocs defeat South Carolina or any of the one seeds, if they end up playing a one seed, I'm running to UTC's campus and we're doing a live show right then and there. We're
Sounds
doing
great. I'm in. I'm on it. I am on it.
yeah, yeah. We will make that happen. Hopefully, I'm not working when that happens. If that,
Yeah,
obviously,
yeah.
if I'm working, then I'll do it as soon as I get off of work.
So deal. I mean, yeah, like we do a live reaction like as soon as we're free, but we're gonna do live from the UTC campus, which by the way is a nice campus. It's an
Oh,
interesting dive.
absolutely.
I remember being there. They have a really great restaurant. Like they have a sandwich place, which is very obscure and
Yellow
niche.
Deli, the Yellow Deli is what
Yeah,
you're thinking.
yeah, that one. It was good. It was good.
Yeah. And also, kind of on the men's side, shout out to the men Mocs. They kind of had an up and down season. They lost their best player for most of the regular season, but they got Jake Stevens. He's like a 7 foot tall center who can shoot threes. He's a great player. Got him back for the conference tournament. And they made a run all the way to the championship game, but I think they just ran out of legs against Furman. But they were a fun team to watch. And I think if he stays healthy, they're a top 2 or 3 team in the conference. So, overall, good run for the men Mocs. Came very close to going back to back in the SoCon, but Furman will be representing the SoCon on the men's side. And that looks like a pretty good team, too. So I'll be curious to see who they get matched up with in the men's tournament.
Yeah, that. So I guess we're gonna straight dive into
Well,
the.
actually, before we go to the men, real quick, I do want to give one more female player shout out, Caitlin Clark for Iowa in the Big Ten title game with Ohio State. I mean, she might be one of the greatest female players I've ever seen. So in the title game against Iowa, she had 30 points, 17 assists, 10 rebounds, and Iowa at halftime was up 61-24. Iowa may be a one seed here in the women's tournament. Honestly, I'm going to go on record right now. If any team knocks out South Carolina this year, I think it's Iowa. I'm going on record right now. I think it's Iowa or nothing. I mean, I know UConn has a chance, but I really feel like Iowa with the offensive firepower, especially with what Clark can do, because Clark, she's like a mix of Steph Curry and Russell Westbrook as a woman. Like, it's just, I mean, she's unbelievable. One of the best players on that side I've ever seen. So definitely Iowa's much watched basketball. I really like that team. And I hope they do it. I want to see someone take out South Carolina. I really want to see someone take out South Carolina. Because like ESPN, like watching the Tennessee South Carolina game, just on a separate note, God, they were so biased. They're just like they could not stop lauding South Carolina. And I understand they're a great team, and obviously they deserve it. That senior class has only lost like 8 games, but man, there's a lot of other good teams out there too, and hopefully one of them takes them out. Like how Mississippi State took out UConn a couple years ago. We need somebody to take out South Carolina, whether that's Tennessee or whether that's someone else. I think the best team with the best chance has got to be Iowa.
I mean, they have the individual talent to do that, but do they have the roster to support her?
I mean, they got some good players. I think their weakness has been defensively, but I mean, like the other day they held an Ohio State team which has been top 10 all year to like 20 points at halftime. So like they clearly have gotten better on that side of the ball, and clearly their offense is just humming along. So we will see what Iowa can do, because clearly you have to be able to shoot to kind of break up South Carolina, because if South Carolina has all the length in the world, and then you got to be able to withstand those runs that South Carolina goes on. That was the problem for the Lady Vols on Sunday, was South Carolina just went on some runs with Zia Cook, and it just they couldn't withstand that. So I do think Iowa might be able to do that, but we'll obviously break down the women's bracket when it comes out, and that comes out on Sunday night. I believe it comes out like 8:30 Sunday evening, about 2 hours after the men's come out. So let's switch over to the men. So this was kind of more of as it seems like it has been every single week, a mixed bag for the basketballs, and honestly, this one's probably more negative. So the basketballs did win their game against Arkansas last Wednesday, the last time we were doing a live show. They beat Arkansas by like 18 points. It was a really good win. But unfortunately, in that game, they lost their point guard, Kai Ziegler, for the season. He just slipped and tore his ACL. And, we saw it live, reacted to it live last week, and he is out. And then they go on the road to Auburn on Saturday. They had a really good first half. They had the lead, but man, that second half was just bad. Just fortunately, more bad offense, and Auburn couldn't miss. So they lose that game, and they lost their double bye. So now they got to play on Thursday. They're going to play the winner of Ole Miss and South Carolina in that second window about 2:30 p.m. in Bridgestone Arena in Nashville. When I look at that bracket, I could see any result. You could tell me any result could happen, and I wouldn't be surprised. You could tell me the Vols would win the SEC tournament again, and I wouldn't be surprised. You could tell me Ole Miss would upsets us on Thursday, and I wouldn't be surprised. I throw my hands up at this point when it comes to the Vols because I just don't know what to expect. I think they can beat anyone in the SEC tournament. They could also lose to anyone in the SEC tournament, and that's just in a way that's freeing. But at the same time, it is just really frustrating because I want to have confidence heading into these tournaments, and I just don't have that confidence.
Yeah, this team has been. I know I heard Rick Barnes had talked about a lot about inconsistency over the past few seasons, but this team kind of being, I think, the most inconsistent of all because they're good on defense, but I think they struggle in offense.
Oh yeah, this team. There's times where they can't buy a bucket, man. Coming down the stretch of the Auburn game, they didn't score for like 5 minutes, and it's just when you don't have people you can consistently rely on, like Josiah James, 4-12. One of your starters here, Jemiah Mashak, great on defense, but only took 2 shots. You had Idu take 5 shots. Now, Santiago Vescovi had a great game on Saturday, had 21 points, but you're going to have more than him. He's not good enough to lead by yourself. I just don't know where the offense is going to come from in March. It's going to take, I think, some super perform. Like Vescovi is going to have to score 20 plus, I think, to beat any good team. And you're going to have Josiah James have some good days. You're going to need Kamwa to shoot more than 5 shots because we need someone to go inside. We got to have some sort of interior presence. Going to need some offense from Tyreek Key. He was 4 of 9 against Auburn. When you look at that stat sheet, it's just none of that's enough if you're going to beat any good team in March. And without Zakai Ziegler running the point, you kind of lost your true point guard. And unfortunately, BJ Edwards, from all indications, is not ready. So you're kind of stuck between a rock and a hard place right now if you're Rick Barnes and the Tennessee basketball team, because you have the talent to beat most teams. You can compete with any team. But, it's just when you go into the scoring droughts, who do you go to bust it? And they don't have someone who can bust that scoring drought right now. And I fully expect that to be the demise of this team. And I fear it's going to be rather early next week.
But I can see Tennessee beating South Carolina and Ole Miss. Especially South Carolina. Team Tennessee swept through and through.
Yeah, I think here's what I think. My prediction for this tournament, I think they win Thursday. I think Ole Miss beats Carolina. Ole Miss did give Tennessee a hard time in Oxford back in December. Ole Miss has been through some coaching changes. I think Tennessee will beat them. Tennessee plays Missouri, and remember, Tennessee had effectively beaten them. Missouri doesn't hit a miracle free at the game Jason and I were at. So, I think they get revenge because Missouri was just unbelievably hot that day. Odds are, I don't think they are that hot again. They could be. You never know. But if I had to play the odds, I would say Tennessee wins that game. Then Tennessee, I think, would probably play Alabama in the semis. And I know we beat them in Knoxville, but I think Bama would get us back. I think my official prediction is a loss in the semis. I think that would be a respectable SEC tournament performance.
So let's predict the SEC men's basketball tournament. So South Carolina, no miss. I see South Carolina making it.
Yeah, I've got Ole Miss.
I think it's going to be a really, really hard game to watch, but I can see I think Georgia takes care of LSU, but I don't think it's going to be a pretty game.
I'll give it to Georgia. LSU. I mean, they might need to fire their coach, and he's only been there after 1 year. I mean, it's
I mean,
bad. I mean, LSU has no excuse to be last in the entire league.
it's a thing though. It's the Will Wade effect. He, looked like a coach who's going to take LSU, higher in basketball, but he left a mess.
Oh yeah, it's embarrassing. It's really bad. They have some stuff they're going to have to do. So we both have
So
Georgia. Yeah.
yeah, both Georgia and South Carolina. So let's move to Thursday. I feel a little jealous because I only covered one SEC men's basketball tournament, and literally I arrived at Nashville, and then the tournament was canceled. Literally, like I think it was like 30, 40 minutes after.
Yeah. Yeah, that's when the whole world ended.
Yeah. So on Thursday we have Mississippi State, Florida. I think I'm gonna take Mississippi State.
Man, this is gonna be a good one. I'm actually gonna go Florida. I think Florida's been playing a lot better the second half of the year. Mississippi State in the tie games I've watched, they always seem to find a way to lose them. Like they just can't find a way to win close games. Florida has found a way to win some bigger games as of late. I do like the Gators.
Next game's gonna be the Tennessee Ole Miss, Tennessee South Carolina. I think Tennessee takes care of business.
Yeah, I've got the balls.
Arkansas, Auburn. I mean, Auburn, just beat Tennessee. Bruce Pearl, I think, has interesting team, has struggled, especially on offense. So like Auburn and Tennessee look so similar teams. That's why I think one was a home and home win. Like Tennessee beat Auburn in Knoxville and down the plains. Auburn beat Tennessee because those teams looks very similar. So I take Auburn.
I'm going to take Auburn too. Arkansas to me, they might be the most disappointing team in the entire country. I mean, they're preseason top 10. They had high hopes, but they are just in disarray. They do not look like a team. I mean, they got blown out in their home court the other day by Kentucky. So I don't know. They're limping into this tournament. They're barely in the field at this point. I like Auburn.
And last but not least, Vandy versus Georgia.
Vandy.
Yeah, I mean, they're playing at home, so take Vandy.
Yeah. You might be kind of surprised where I'm going with Vandy too here.
So now the quarterfinals. Bama, Florida. I think definitely Bama. I think they're the number one team for a reason.
Yeah, I got Bama.
Tennessee, Missouri, a rematch of the regular season game where the Mizzou beat Tennessee on a last second shot.
For me and Jason, get some revenge balls. I got them.
That SEC West showdown between Auburn and Texas A&M. Ooh, I don't know. I think there's going to be an upset. Give me Auburn.
I'm actually going to go with A&M. Auburn, they really struggle on offense. I think they do enough to get Arkansas, but I think that A&M is going to finally win this one. They'll be a low-scoring, ugly game.
And Vandy, Kentucky. How big is this game from John Calipari? I mean, because he always able to make at least the semifinals, so he got a double bye.
True. But
who would have thought he was
going to hear myself all the way? So just had feedback.
Oh, feedback?
I can hear feedback. Yeah. I can hear myself talking. Like I'm talking and then I hear myself. Actually, no, it's good now.
How about?
All right, so I'm good. Anyway, on Kentucky, I mean, this one is a pretty big one for Kentucky. Oh, hold on, it's happening again.
I don't know. Hold on.
So when it comes to, let's see. All right, testing. All right, testing. I can still hear myself. Now I can't hear myself. All right, I think it sounds good now. Sorry guys for this technical issue, but on this potential Vanderbilt Kentucky game, Vanderbilt just beat Kentucky in Rupp Arena. Vanderbilt to me has probably been maybe the second or third best team in the entire league in the second half of the season. Kentucky is just an up and down team. I just don't trust them. I might go and Vanderbilt. Honestly, they've played themselves onto the bubble, and Kentucky solidly in the field. Vandy has the most to gain from this tournament. They have to have a deep run to make the NCAA tournament, and actually, I think Vanderbilt pulls the upset.
I think it's gonna be a close game, but also give me Vandy.
Yeah, so we're both going to the Vanderbilt Commodores to the semis. So imagine if on the semifinal Saturday, both the Vols and the Commodores are in Bridgestone Arena. I mean, just imagine what that crowd looks like.
Yeah, it's gonna be an all Tennessee crowd.
Yeah. So we have third Saturday in March between Tennessee and Alabama. And in the first semifinal. So I'm just going to go ahead and give the rest of my picks here for this tournament. So Tennessee, Alabama, as I said, Tennessee beat Bama, and really, the key here is can Alabama solve Jemai Mace shot? Because that was really the difference in the first matchup. But I think they do. Although Bama, I do think they are kind of wobbly right now after everything that's happened to them off the court. But I think they'll be good enough to find a way to win this game against Tennessee in the semifinals. Now, I am going to go a little bit wild on the other semifinal. First and foremost, for you, Gus, who would you pick between the Vols and Alabama in the semis?
I am gonna go. Tennessee. Take the Vols. I know it's a long way to go, but give me the Vols.
All right, Vols to the title game for. Would it be like the fifth time in the last 7 years or something? I mean, Barnes has made free. He's made free because he won last year. He lost to Kentucky and Auburn. So yeah, this would be his fourth appearance in 7 years. So that's really impressive. As much crap as we give him for the NCAA tournament, he's been great in the SEC tournament. He's been phenomenal in the SEC tournament. Here's the thing, though. I would sacrifice SEC tournament this year for an NCAA tournament deep run, but we'll just see what happens there. So you have Tennessee in the semis, or the championship game. I have Alabama in the championship. So you have Vanderbilt versus Auburn. Who do you think wins that?
I pick the upset. Give me Vandy. Vandy to the final.
So I have Vanderbilt versus Texas A&M, and I'm also picking the upset. I'm picking Vanderbilt. So we both are on the Vanderbilt Commodores to the finals. No, I'm good, Gus. Everything is fixed on my end.
Good.
So you have Vanderbilt and Tennessee in the title. Dude, okay, I'm just trying to imagine this. If we had Vanderbilt, Tennessee in the SEC championship game, a team that also beat Tennessee on the last second. I mean, and this could be a situation where if Vanderbilt loses, they're not in the NCAA tournament. Kind of like last year with Texas A&M, because remember A&M made it all the way to the tournament final and then lost and didn't make it into the NCAA tournament. So this would be almost a similar situation to that.
Like an all or nothing game for the Commodores. They're playing on their home city. I know probably it's not going to be a home crowd because I think a lot of Vols fans are going to make that I-40 drive to the central Tennessee, Middle Tennessee.
If this happens, I mean, it's going to be mostly orange. But who do you think wins? Tennessee, Vandy?
I take the 2P, Go Tennessee.
At the balls. So I have Vanderbilt versus Alabama. And this one might be a little crazy, but I think the Commodores are going to be dancing because I've got them upsetting Alabama and winning the entire SEC tournament. I think Alabama is vulnerable right now. I think everyone in this tournament is vulnerable. And to me, Vanderbilt's the team that seems the most dangerous to me in this entire field. So that might be insane to pick Vanderbilt in this tournament, but I'm picking Vanderbilt in this tournament. So you have the Vols over Vandy. I have Vanderbilt over Alabama. It will probably end up being something wildly different, but that is the beauty of picking brackets this time of the year. So we'll see which one of us was more right next week.
But in terms of bracketology of the men's, I do think Tennessee gonna be hot. I think three seed is a fair seed. I think probably they win the SC tournament as I predicting. Probably they're gonna go number 2 seed, but I don't know.
And if they go that deep, I could definitely see a 2 seed. Just right now, looking at the ESPN bracket, they're right now free seed in the East versus Louisiana. I'm just going to say this right now. If Creighton's the 6 seed and we play Creighton in the second round, we're not going to the Sweet 16. I think Creighton, with their offense, of what they're able to do, that I think is a terrible matchup for Tennessee because that's a team that can score in bunches. Now, I will say this: Creighton's defense isn't great. So, is that a game where Tennessee could really do well offensively? That's certainly a possibility. But I would not like that matchup of Creighton. I'm just telling you that right now.
That's why they have to win the SC tournament to avoid being the 3rd seed and maybe being the number 2 seed, where right now it's Baylor. I mean, you're gonna face Montana State, and then Iowa or Boise State.
Yeah, and just that bracket as a whole. I'm gonna say I'm crazy right now. I think Oral Roberts might make the Elite Eight in that. Because Oral Roberts is that 12 seed right there, and that UConn has been struggling throughout the second half of the year. Iowa State, they have some big wins. They're kind of like Tennessee in a way where they have some really big wins, but then they have some questionable losses. Houston's the 1 seed, but I just haven't been impressed with Houston. I know they've been top ranked all year. They've won a lot of games, but they don't play the toughest schedule. I'm just not sold on the Houston Cougars as a team that can make a deep run. I could see Oral Roberts making a deep run on that top half of the bracket if that progresses.
How about North Carolina? I mean, they're in the first 4-out group. They were the runner-up last year. They made all the way to the national championship game.
They're going to have to win the whole tournament. The ACC is really weak this year, which is not helping them. They will have to win the ACC championship, which is going to be a tall task. They got to go through Virginia. Pittsburgh and North Carolina are two other teams that are fighting for their lives. Clemson's trying to get back into it. Duke's been playing a lot better the last couple of weeks.
I think Duke definitely want to win to eliminate a rival earlier and don't have to make it that a matchup like in the as we remember, Duke last year were eliminating the semis by North Carolina, one of the biggest college basketball games of all time.
Oh, absolutely, and that game's always going to haunt Duke, but it would, I guess, make it up just a little bit if they could keep UNC out of the entire thing this year. Looking around, but just looking at the whole bubble right now, last 4 in, you have Mississippi State is one of the last 4 in. And so that Mississippi State Florida game, we both picked Florida. That would be a devastating loss for Mississippi State. And I'm not sold on Miss State. I think some of these teams that are out right now are better than Miss State.
Yeah, I think they're going to have to at least make to the semifinals to keep the seed.
Yeah, and what's interesting too when you look at Charleston, for example, over on hold on, I'm trying to figure this out because they have the Charleston Cougars are one of the teams listed
Yeah,
as
the next
the
4
next
hours.
four. They could win their tournament, and that's a spot taken away. So that's certainly interesting to
Yeah,
think
so
about.
a lot of to unravel this championship week. Um, to decide who's going to be in and who's going to be out.
Yeah, and we're really gonna I mean, obviously, there's no use in going through this entire bracket because this is not what it's gonna look like this time next week. But shout out to let's shout out some of the teams that see AQ qualifiers for a tournament because I know, for example, Southeastern Missouri State, they won the OVC, so shout out to them. They're gonna be dancing in the tournament. So shout out to Kennesaw State. They won the Atlantic Sun, the UNC Asheville Bulldogs, and former Vol Drew Pember. Drew Pember is the star of UNC Asheville. He scored like 48 in one game this year. He's been great.
Yeah, that's why when you don't work in one program, you might find yourself in another program that you find better use of, or you find kind of like you fit in better.
Yeah. Also from the Missouri Valley, Drake, not the rapper Drake, but the school Drake from Iowa. They're in Des Moines. They're going to the tournament. The Farley Dickinson Knights from the Northeastern Conference going Southeastern Missouri. And I don't know if you saw this game, Southeastern Missouri versus Tennessee Tech. I was watching it because I was curious to see if Tennessee Tech would make it. To Tennessee Tech, so they catch this ball. It's like a second. They throw it all the way from the backcourt to the 3-point line. The guy from Tech catches it, steps around, shoots it, makes it. And it looks like Tennessee Tech won it. But it turned out it was only a 2, so they went to overtime, and then they ended up losing. So heartbreaker for the Tennessee Tech Golden Eagles, which almost got Cookeville to the NCAA tournament. So that would have been pretty cool to see for the Golden Eagles. Also shout out to the Louisiana Raging Cajuns of the Sun Belt. Of course, Furman beat Chattanooga last night. And those are all the current winners. All right, current qualifiers. And of course, there's more coming up throughout the next couple of days. I believe there's 32 automatic qualifiers. Actually, we're about to put in, it looks like North Kentucky. Northern Kentucky is up 63-58 on Cleveland State in the Horizon League Championship. This used to be the league that Butler was in. So, yeah, so it looks like Northern Kentucky is going to move on to the NCAA tournament. So, yeah, those are all your current winners. Also, just for Jason's sake, he no longer has to watch any more Louisville this year. They lost tonight 80-62 to Boston College. The dreadful 4-28 season for the Louisville Cardinals is over. So just like a horrible season.
It's like one of those things you're like, I'm glad it's over because it's so dreadful.
Yeah, that's just no offense. No one should ever have to go through a season that bad in college basketball. It's just awful. Hopefully Kenny Payne can fix things for the Louisville Cardinals. All right, but we'll talk much more college basketball next week after Selection Sunday, and we'll definitely have to do some sort of like bracket breakdown as we head into March Madness. But switching over for just a little bit to professional basketball. Now, obviously, NBA takes a bit of a backseat in March, but there's been some big headlines. Probably the biggest headline, Ja Morant. I don't know if you've really seen this story, Gus, but Ja Morant, he was having a little too much fun in Colorado because he he took a gun into a strip club in Colorado, and he is currently under suspension. And he was dumb enough to film himself on Instagram Live and showing it off. So right now he's trying to, I mean, and obviously Ja Morant, this isn't the first situation he's had. Right now he is dealing with a lawsuit that alleges he punched a teenager during a pickup game back at his home last summer. So, you know, it seems like a series of problematic behaviors. But we have to remember, John Morant, he's only 23. He's younger than me. I mean, just think about that. He's younger than I am, and I can only imagine dealing with the level of fame and the level of pressure that he has, and going from and just going to that level of pressure overnight. And I know Taylor Jenkins, the Grizzlies coach, said that he has to grow up and get better, but they're behind him. They're trying to support him. You know, well, what do you make of the situation for John Morant? Because I mean, obviously, he's one of the best talents in the NBA. He's one of the most exciting young players.
Well, one of the things I want to ask is that is this becoming a trend of basketball players, both college and pro, to kind of be associated with handguns?
Well, you got a
And
point because you have the whole Alabama situation. You
yeah,
know,
like
yeah,
yeah, like and it's like you know, I don't know like what happens in its inner circles of basketball players because if you think about it, said John Morant is young, so is the Alabama basketball player, and they're so inner circle that they might have like this, if one does something, I want a copycat or like or a trend or because it's kind of weird of a similar situation happening to another basketball player. I know it's not an NBA one, but as you said, the age gap is not that different.
yeah. And also this reminds me of another story that kind of broke over the last week. Jalen Carter, the star defensive tackle for Georgia, who's heading to the NFL draft this year, he got arrested last week because of if you remember a few months ago, there was that tragic crash at Athens that killed um, fellow a fellow teammate Devin Willock and a staffer in Chandler LaCroix on January 15th. It was like it was the night after their national championship celebration, and the Athens Police Department issued a arrest warrant saying that they are charging him with reckless driving and racing. And they're saying that potentially led to the crash that killed his teammate and that staffer. And it's, again, it's one of those just unfortunate, tragic situations where it seems like one of these young athletes is making an incredibly reckless decision that is leading to these consequences. Now, thankfully, in John Morant's case, no one died. But obviously, you're taking a gun to a place where people are drinking and arguments can easily spark. Something could happen.
I know it's going to be a very controversial, but just a thought came to my mind. It's like, as much as there's groups that kind of embrace defending the Second Amendment and all the right to own a gun. I don't see them defending the players, because I see a lot of groups defending, other kinds of groups that are having handguns and owning guns and using them in all sort of places. It's like, why they are not going say, hey, I know these players make mistakes, but they have the constitutional right to have a gun.
Yeah, I'm trying to unpack that because obviously they're going to defend the constitutional right, and there's a reason why that Second Amendment exists, in terms of just the history of the United States and how it was founded in terms of trying to be freed from the British monarchy, and obviously America in the late 1700s was heavily decentralized, so a lot of people kind of had to defend themselves as a course of last resort, just because you couldn't just call 911 in 1789. And of course, there's always the fear of what if we get invaded? Like look at Ukraine, you know.
I'm not saying they're right or wrong. I just say I know we again a little bit off sports, but it's since we're discussing, it's like it's interesting that it's how pick and choose this kind of topics, and I know it's kind of you know a little bit different argument, but it's just you should defending the principle, not the people.
Yeah, and I guess it's just I feel like it's almost a problem in America because we hear about shootings so much, we hear about tragedy so much that's like, oh, okay, that sucks for them, but this is what I believe. It's automatically, oh, I believe this about guns, or I believe that about guns. And people are more worried about saying, oh, is this a point for my side, or is this potentially a negative for my side? And they don't care about the person involved. They care about what scores the political points.
Yeah.
And this John Morant situation is clearly a political point. There's so many different points that people think they're going to be able to score off of this. And I really haven't listened to the other talk shows about this. I can only imagine what they're saying about John Morant. And to me, clearly, it's just a young man who, he may have the wrong people in his life guiding him. Because I mean, that's a highly stressful job because you only get to be a professional athlete for so long, especially a person of his caliber, and you only get one shot at it. And I really hope moving forward, he surrounds himself with some people that can really help him manage it better. 'Cause I'm not saying don't go out and have fun, but you can't be dumb enough to film yourself with a gun in a club, especially in a
No,
place like Colorado, because they don't necessarily have I guess, the weakest gun laws out there.
and to your point, Nick, and you mentioned not only basketball cases but even football cases of African American athletes surrounding themselves with bad influence people because they want to people away from the sports they're playing, basketball or football, and surrounding themselves with people that enable them and make them feel like kind of like a somebody that's like,
It's
oh
a
my god,
lack of structure.
yeah,
Because I mean, thankfully, there is starting to be more and more of these organizations that are really reaching out to youth and in unprivileged situations that can go out and help them, help guide them. Like, for example, today, one of the stories I covered for my news station, Jahmyr Gibbs, you're the running back for Alabama. He is from just down the road here in Dalton, in North Georgia. He is actually volunteering with a local nonprofit that goes out into schools and teaches kids about healthy relationships and how to resolve conflict. And he's going to be a part of that, doing videos for them, going and talking to those kids. And organizations like that can help these students. Jahmyr Gibbs, he's going to be another young star athlete. I think he's going to be a great running back somewhere in the NFL, who will need that guidance. And, it's up to, I guess, the individual citizens, these organizations, to really reach out to the community, because you never know who in that community is going to have access
like
to
for
all
example,
this.
like a player here in Brazil that a lot of people are now kind of scrutinizing more. Not I'm not saying criticizing, but kind of being more analytical than excited about is Hendrick, the 16-year-old player who is now playing with professionals at Palmeiras and already being sold for Real Madrid. Imagine what's going through the mind of a 16-year-old where you're playing on the professional roster of a team that has just won the national championship in Brazil and is already being sold of one of the biggest teams, probably the biggest team in the world right now. Their current Champions League champions, Real Madrid.
Yeah, and remember, your brain does not fully become an adult until you're the age of 25. So you're 17. I mean, that's just unbelievable. I mean, talk about really needing some good mentors, because he's going to be, I mean, just the pressure he's going to have is just unbelievable.
Because like right now it's so funny. There's this news story about him. Like he signed with like to have some boxing lessons with the Palmeiras offering, which is good, I think, to release some of the pressure. But I even joked on the with the colleague today. It's like he really needs that because he's starting to feel the pressure of being on the starting lineup of Palmeiras, who's not being as good as he think he can be. He every time he is subbed, he's not mad at the coach. He looks mad at himself, like because a lot of pressure. Like imagine John Morant pressure right now, carrying a franchise, carrying a hope of an entire community of Memphis, Tennessee, who's been dealing a lot with a lot of tragedies and even shootings, and they see the Memphis Grizzlies as this kind of good story hope of making a deep run in the NBA.
Yeah, you're right about that. And at Memphis, I mean, really, despite of that tragedy, they really were a beacon of hope to an extent because, a lot of everyone just expected them when the video of Tyree Nichols getting beat to death came out. They expected full on riots like we saw in Minneapolis or in Ferguson, but we saw quite the opposite. The national news media did not get the fires and stuff that they wanted, but said Memphis came together and really, you know, came together in prayer. And obviously, this John Morant situation is super unfortunate because that was someone that I think that a lot of those people were really looking forward to. Because the Grizzlies, I know you can watch them all across Tennessee, but that is truly Memphis's team. You have to be from West Tennessee to truly understand how much that team means. Because think about it, when you go back to the Titans and the Oilers, when the Oilers first came to Tennessee from Houston, they played a season in Memphis, and everyone knew they were going to Nashville, and the people of Memphis felt so betrayed by that they didn't show up because they're in Memphis. They're not Nashville. Memphis and Nashville are two separate cities.
Oh
And when they
yeah.
got the Grizzlies, that's theirs. It's Memphis, it's the 901. You got the Tigers and Penny Hardaway. We have a huge rivalry with them in Tennessee. I wish we played every single year because it's just two separate teams, two separate identities. But and that's what makes the state of Tennessee great is the fact we have so many different identities in this state, and Memphis is a unique part of that. And they love their Grizz. They it's grind city out there, and I really hope John Morant works himself through this and is able to be that representative that Memphis needs.
And to think about it, when was the last time Memphis had such a star player as John Morant?
And for the Grizzlies, never,
So
never.
imagine
I
being
mean, in terms of the city, probably Derrick Rose when he was with the Memphis Tigers in 2008.
that. I mean, yeah, that's true. But talk about the franchise Memphis Grizzlies,
Yeah.
probably the main star. But that's true. Like you had Derrick Rose, which didn't want
And
the
of course, you
tournament.
had Penny Hardaway in the early 90s, too. So, those two for sure, but definitely with the Grizz. Yeah, I mean, John Morant's been the guy.
Yeah. So I just hope that he can, find with this leave of absence some guidance to be, you know, find himself again and even come back stronger to the playoffs. Because I bet the Memphis Grizzlies are gonna make it. But the question is, are they gonna be ready for the playoffs?
Yeah, that's they've got about a month to figure this out. So I think he'll be back in time. And hopefully they'll be able to put this situation behind him. But clearly it's going to be a microscope on his actions moving forward. But if he's got the right people around him, they can figure it out. Real quick on the whole Carter situation, a lot of people are debating his draft stock. What do you see? How do you see that situation unfolding for Jalen Carter? Because I
Yeah,
mean, some people thought he may be number one before the situation happened.
yeah, definitely. It makes because the draft is about the future. So those college football players, like, and they're it probably and a lot of them already have agents. They're probably like want to freeze them between December and April to be like, don't do anything stupid. After the draft, you can go be crazy, but unfortunately, as we all discussing, there are young athletes which sometimes they're gonna do things that are can be dangerous and reckless, but they're probably I don't know how this is gonna affect the draft.
Yeah.
One player that's been taking a lot seriously, and from what you describe, I don't know how he's gonna be up in the value. Is Will Levis? A lot of mock drafts still taking Will Levis as higher as a top 10 pick.
Yeah, and we're gonna get into that here in just a moment. I do want to just finish off a thought on Jalen Carter, though. Once again, just if you want to take anything away from this, don't drink and drive. They said that our Athens police say that the Chandler McQuarrie had a BAC, a blood alcohol limit of 0.197. Like that's twice the legal limit. Um, it's just that alcohol and driving never mixes well at all. It's just unfortunate. Also, just another point too on UGA. Um, Carter's arrest was the ninth for the Georgia program in the last 13 and a half months from the online Athens newspaper. So just yeah, kind of I know Georgia's won 2 back-to-back championships, but it's come at the expense of some off the field issues for the Bulldogs.
And while we're in matter of young players dealing with problems off the field and with some situations that even involve the police, I want to talk about the São Paulo young star situation. Pedrinho, he's been playing really well. He scored a beautiful goal a couple of weeks ago against Inter de Limeira. He was getting some time on the team, especially in the second half. He was very like a really promising player on São Paulo's roster. But last week, a story broke out that he was accused by his ex girlfriend of domestic violence, that he beat her, cursed her in a lot of names, destroy her cell phone. And now he was even be accused of damaging property, of kicking her the girl's dad's car. So it's a whole mess. São Paulo is still kind of investigating the situation. São Paulo did not suspend him or kind of like put any sanctions or punishments or anything, but it's definitely sad to see athletes kind of getting to the situation that they probably gonna affect their talent and even like their chances of growing in their careers.
About to say that it's kind of surprising they didn't suspend him while that investigation's ongoing. I don't know. Is that like a traditional practice down there to not to? Because I hear you would suspend an athlete if they were in an investigation like that.
Like São Paulo sent a statement, and I want to quote they last week about the issue. I just want to find it. They put on their Instagram account here. So quoting from São Paulo, São Paulo firmly reprimands the. I know that's another one. Where is it? They put out a statement, but I can't find it. But basically, what the statement says was like, we're evaluating the situation, we're monitoring the situation, we let the investigation unfold, and we're gonna take actions after the investigation finishes.
Yeah, well, it's a very typical PR release, that's for sure. But I'll be curious to see how that unfolds because those domestic violence situations are always the trickiest. Because I mean, most of the time in investigations, so he said, she said, and it's really hard for investigators to figure out what actually happened.
Yeah, that's true. But a lot of come out in the last week about the girl's name is Amanda Nunes. She went to the police station last Sunday. According to Rogério Ceni, it was like a decision had to be made between the front office and Pedrinho. Nobody's guilty before being like judged, and we all agree that nobody agrees with violence in any side of being, including on the field, not just in person, not just with people, but in life as a whole. So it's a very divided scenario. We can describe it, and he's been still being in the training ground, training with the team, but he's not been on the roster. He wasn't on the roster on Sunday.
Yeah, I'll be very curious to hear your latest updates on that situation. But I know you really wanted to get into some NFL Combine. So obviously NFL Combine, the annual. I mean, I heard one person kind of describe it, and I thought this was a hilarious way to put it. It's the underwear Olympics. The underwear Olympics just basically measures these guys on their true raw physical attributes. Which I think, I'm going to be honest here. I think combined stats are super overrated. I taste it. Yeah, I don't know why you would change your opinion based off a combine result. I mean, all these dudes are going to be super athletic.
The combine made sense in the past where you didn't have a lot of video or media about a player, and you want to really get to know the player, and the only way to evaluate him was through a series of physical evaluation and exercise like that. But now we all have tape. We all have probably we have tape of all the 130 football programs in Division One.
Yeah, we have
So
tapes of all these kids back to high school.
yeah, so why you need a showdown of skills that in the NFL they're useful, but they're not. I don't say necessary. Like I would understand if you do a quarterback combine when you put like on a game situation, like under pressure, like you put a defense. But those exercises, like as you said, like looks like more like an Olympic trial than a football related kind of test.
Yeah, really, I think I know you said Will Levis is interesting. For me, I'm very curious to see who takes the bait on Florida's Anthony Richardson because he had a 40.5-inch vertical and a 10 feet 9 inches broad jump. Like as a raw athlete, Anthony Richardson is unbelievable. We know this. But as a quarterback, he often struggled quite a bit with Florida. And a lot of people think he's truly a first-round quarterback.
I think a lot of people probably think about comparing him to Lamar Jackson in terms of physicality. So that's why probably he's been considering higher.
I think he's more, in terms of build, he's more like Cam Newton. Like, that to me is what he
More like
reminds me more.
no, so you can see he's in a class because I think Lamar Jackson, Cam Newton was like that run a lot quarterback, a lot of physical, but not always accurate.
Yeah, I think that's. I mean, you're going to have to build an offense like that. You're going to have to do like what Tim Tebow was in Denver, to kind of reference another Florida quarterback, because he's not going to be a drop back passer
No,
at all.
no, yeah, that like Lamar Jackson inherited a very stable offense in Baltimore. That's why he probably flourished as an NFL quarterback. Probably if Anthony Richardson goes to like Atlanta or Houston, he probably is gonna have a hard time. But if he goes to let's say Seattle, or I'm thinking about you know even Baltimore as a backup, he may flourish. It depends on where you land.
Yeah, so I'm looking at CBS's mock draft. So they have Indianapolis, uh, Indy trading up to get the first pick, and they have CJ Stroud going there. They have Bryce Young going to Houston at 2. They got Richardson going to Carolina at 3. They have Levis going to Vegas at 7. In terms of all the quarterbacks, Stroud was amazing against Georgia. He was amazing against Georgia. He blew me away. But I will say this: I would 100% take Bryce Young before CJ Stroud.
And I'll definitely take Hendon Hooker above Will Levis. That we can all agree on.
Yes, absolutely. I would definitely take Hendon Hooker over Will Levis. No questions about it. But the guys in the NFL seem to think otherwise because they are just in love with Will Levis's body. They don't watch the tape. And speaking of,
it's like NFL GMs, just give Nicholas Hill a call. He watched Will Levis in person. He saw what he's capable and not capable to do.
Yeah, I watched this guy throw for 90. Look, so I watched 2 quarterbacks play Tennessee in person this year, Will Levis and Spencer Radler. One threw for 6 touchdowns and 550 yards. The other threw for 98 yards and no touchdowns. The one with less than 100 yards is going into the NFL draft this year. The one that threw for 550 is still in college. So I'll just let you make your decision based off of that.
Perfect. I'll rest my case.
Yeah, so I'll be traumatized by that other guy forever. But that's just the way that worked. Anyway, also looking at the first round, shout out Tennessee right now has 2 first rounders. Darnell Wright, currently pick 17 to the Steelers. I mean, that would be amazing. I mean, Darnell Wright. I mean, talk about a shout out to a guy that stuck it out for some really bad times in Knoxville, and he's going to get rewarded, probably with a mid first round pick. And that means he's going to go to a pretty decent team, and he's going to go and protect Kenny Pickett. I mean, that's pretty awesome.
Yeah, that's true. I think this team deserves at least 2 players in the first round for how much improved Tennessee played.
Yeah, Jalen Hyatt right now is projected pick 26 to Dallas. Could you imagine CeeDee Lamb and Hyatt on the same wide receiver core? That's a lot of speed.
Yeah, it will. I mean, for a quarterback like that, Prescott, who really needs running stamina, a running help to make the offense work, definitely will be very helpful.
Yeah, right now for the Titans in pick 11, they have them with Paris Johnson Jr., which is a left tackle, and which I mean that'd be a smart pick. There's a ton of moves that the Titans can make here at 11, and I think they could trade up maybe for a quarterback, but you need an offensive lineman. I wouldn't hate Paris Johnson Jr. They're at 11, but honestly, I think a lot of it comes down to what happens this offseason and free agency, and for the Titans. As I kind of told our Rock Solid Sports chat the other day, the lights out, the party is over because I think the Titans are about to blow it up. I think we are entering full on rebuild mode because Jeffrey Simmons, and so we have 2 things here. Jeffrey Simmons has unfollowed the Titans on all social media as he's trying to get a new contract from the Titans or someone else. I'm worried we maybe enter into another AJ Brown situation where our best player dips. And then Derrick Henry, the stalwart, the longtime best running back in the league, no matter how mad it makes some people. Derrick Henry's on the trade block, apparently, according to rumors. I mean, if Derrick Henry is traded away, that's been like the whole identity of the Titans for the last 5 years. It really is the end, maybe, of an era for the Tennessee Titans.
That's why that loss in the divisional round against the Bengals probably was going to be the most like hurt losses ever for Titans fans.
Yeah, I mean, we're not getting anywhere close to that for a long time.
Probably more than the loss in the Super Bowl versus the Rams, because that one was a magical run, was an improbable run. That team in 2022 was expected to make it at least to the conference championship and even to the Super Bowl, and they blew it at home.
Yeah, I mean, and that's really the reason why, it's even though this team did some good things when they made the AFC title game back in 2019, and then they were kind of a disappointment. You made one title game, you won a couple of AFC Souths when it was a really, really bad division. But at the end of the day, we never were able to develop the passing game necessary to win on the big stage. You had AJ Brown, but you didn't really have anything ever to go with that. And think about this: 2 off seasons ago, we were running into the season off of back-to-back AFC South off of an AFC South championship. The year before that, we had just won the AFC title. We're coming in with a 2,000-yard rusher in Derrick Henry. We had A.J. Brown, one of the best emerging wide receivers. And then we had just gotten Julio Jones, who we still thought was a top-tier wide receiver. 2 off seasons ago, I thought the Titans were legitimately going to be one of the best teams in the league, a Super Bowl contender. And that year, they ended up being the number 1 seed in the AFC, despite having so many injuries. And then the Bengals games happened, and it's just been a horrible, horrible existence ever since. I don't know. It's just, I mean, everything changed that day. And it feels like it's going to take a major win at some point to turn it back for the Tennessee Titans. And I think it's going to be a couple of years, because at this point, you got to blow it up. If you're going to trade Derrick Henry, if you're thinking about it, you got to do it now. And I don't want them to, but honestly, it might be the right choice because you have to seriously sit back and think about it. Okay, are the Titans going to seriously contend in the AFC in the next 2 to 3 years when you still got Patrick Mahomes in his prime? You got Joe Burrow entering his prime. When you have, Trevor Lawrence emerging in Jacksonville. Um, I don't think the answer to that is yes. I really think that if you're a Titans, you have to be realistic about your situation right now. That your offensive line is a mess. You don't have any reliable playmakers at wide receiver. You need some serious help in the secondary. And frankly, you don't have a quarterback capable of winning you a championship. Ryan Tannehill was great for what he did, but now, you have to be realistic and say he's just a stopgap. Um, so you can't win it with a guy like Derrick Henry, unfortunately. You can't win a championship like that anymore.
And also, I think Derrick Henry is just gonna ask the Titans front office, like, "Hey, you can get a rebuilding value with me, and I can find a team that I can still be useful and maybe help with a championship kind of caliber." Like,
Yeah, I think like the Bills, for example. Um,
yeah,
Like that's a team that needs a running back. And he wouldn't be used 30 times a game like he is in Tennessee. That would perhaps give him some career longevity. And I think at this point, I wouldn't begrudge him for leaving. I want him to get a chance at the Super Bowl because I love what he's done for Nashville. I love what he's done for the Tennessee Titans. Um, I mean, he's been our franchise for years, and he deserves a chance. Like AJ Brown, like he deserves a chance to get to go play for a Super Bowl, and that's not going to be with the Titans. And I don't want him to waste away here in Nashville. So I hope it doesn't happen, but and I'm going to be sad if it does, but I could totally see it. Now, on the flip side, we have to find a way to get Jeffrey Simmons back. He is still really young. He's only like 24. Um, if we let Jeffrey Simmons walk, then I'm just going to be outraged beyond all belief.
and that if that happens, you have to question how bad is the Titans of keeping talent, because you mentioned
Yeah.
the AJ Brown situation. Now another player you're letting him walk out.
Yeah. I mean, you have to, I mean, you got to at some point say, okay, enough's enough. We got to find a way to get, um, to keep these guys. Because, I mean, at the very least, your defense is your stronger half right now. So you got to try to keep that intact as much as you can so you can have a place to rebuild. Because if you get rid of all your good players, then you're the Houston Texans. I mean, we are staring down the barrel of being the Houston Texas Gods. And that terrifies me because that could be in several years of the abyss, several years in the darkness. And kind of like how it was, because think about this. We were number one seed in 2008, lose to the Ravens, and we didn't make it back to the playoffs for 9 years. Um, we if we mismanage this, we could be in a similar spot. And that's a scary thought that we wasted away, 6 years of competitiveness with really nothing to show for it, and then we're going back into the dark ages.
Yeah, I think that's the and probably and how much Mike Vrabel is going to be on that run. He might think about it. I think the another thing, Mike Vrabel looks a perfect candidate of replacing Bill Belichick when he retires. I think he's going to be the chosen one. He has a lot of connection with New England. He played with New England. I think he showed that he's capable of being a top tier coach. I think Mike Vrabel is going to be the next head coach of the Patriots when Bill Belichick retires.
Oh boy, I mean, honestly, I could totally see that.
Because if
I
you think
could,
about it, I think he has even more success in the league than Mike Patricia or uh, uh, I'm gonna the he won the one who coached Denver and even the Raiders.
McDaniels, yes.
Yeah, I think Vrabel had more success than, let's say, Patricia McDaniels.
Oh, easily. He's been the best coach out of that tree by far. I mean, he got a number one seed with 91 players throughout the course of a year. I mean, you just don't do that. I mean, he almost won the division again with Josh Dobbs as quarterback, So,
Yeah,
because I don't blame last year on Mike Vrabel. I blame it on I blame it completely on our GM
yeah, yeah. He was fired, especially after the Eagles
Robertson.
game. He was fired after the Eagles game, which was the epitome of the incompetence of the front office for having a former player who was traded to the Eagles and he destroyed the Titans.
Yeah, and I'm
So,
afraid Jeffrey Simmons would do the same thing if he's traded away.
so that's what I asked. Like you talk about players leaving. How about the coaches? Do you think that Mike Vrabel is going to stay, or he might think about it another coaching opportunity, especially when a vacancy in New England comes along? Because Bill Belichick's not going to stay there forever.
But I'm saying, when was the last time we saw an NFL team hire another sitting head coach? That's I'm trying to remember that situation, and I just don't teams because I feel like that's a very rare situation. The NFL team hiring other head coaches. Um, let's see. I don't know if that's happened. And I know that John Gruden went from the Bucks to the Raiders, but that was like a trade situation. So, but I could totally see this situation if Vrabel thinks the Titans are a lost cause. He could totally jump.
Yeah, yeah, that's what I see. Or even the Titans do a solid, fire him so he can go without any trauma to New England. I don't know, but I don't think Vrabel's gonna stay there for long, especially when that rebuild truly starts, which is gonna be next season.
Yeah. And some other NFL news. First and foremost, something that we already do know. Derek Carr is looks like he is very much heading to New Orleans. Um, he has agreed to a deal with the New Orleans Saints. He will have a 4-year contract that could potentially be worth up to $150 million. What do you think about this?
Well, I mean, first and foremost, I mean, I'm happy that he found a team that probably gonna embrace him because he felt so, you know, he gave it all to the Raiders in Oakland and in Vegas, and I don't think he was truly appreciated.
Oh, I agree with that. I mean, he was he single handedly got that team to the playoffs 2 years ago, and yeah, what they were winning with is getting benched the next year. Um, and when you look at the Saints, Chris Olave is a great young receiver. I think he's going to have a great connection with him. If Alvin Kamara can stay out of trouble, that's a nice running back to have with you. Marquez Callaway is another nice wide receiver. And if you look at the NFC South, and also there's young Gus with Derek Carr. I believe this was 2016.
Yeah, 2016 when he went to Nashville when the Titans played the back then Oakland Raiders. I have a funny story with him. So I got that picture because I went to the field to record my my when you record yourself, kind of talk about the game. And while I was walking back on that tunnel, I passed through the visitor locker room and I see a headphone dropping. And when I got the headphone, I gave it to the person. It was none other than Derek Carr, the headphone that you see on his neck, that one that I
Yeah.
handle. I normally don't take pictures with players. I try to keep it professional. But since he was nice, he thanked me for getting his headphone, and I kind of and he was nice enough. I was like, "Can I take a picture?" And then he had me to take a picture. That's why I always rooted for him. He was such a nice person. He was so kind of funny, and he laughed at the situation about the headphones. So that's why I rooted for him, and now I hope he finds success in New Orleans. Because I think in New Orleans also, they need to be viable again. They're still kind of paralyzed about the Sean Payton, Drew Brees, kind of both left, and they're still kind of recovering. So when you got a quality quarterback like Derek Carr, it's like a path to the future, not being stuck in the past.
Yeah, and I think when you look at the NFC South, the Falcons and Panthers are full on rebuilds. The Buccaneers are in a transition state right now. They got to figure out who their next quarterback is going to be. This is prime territory. The Saints, I think, have a great chance to get back to the playoffs. I think they have a great chance to win the NFC South this upcoming year. And right now, I would pick them to win the South.
And it's so funny. It was a good timing because if they did that like last year or the year before, it was still a very crowded NFC South. But now it's a wide open division. So they're one step forward of other teams. I think the team that really gonna struggle this year is gonna be Tampa without Tom Brady. They're already a mess with him. Imagine without him. And the question is, who's going to be the new quarterback for the Panthers and the Falcons, and especially the Panthers, because they're being looking for some trades, especially with high quality quarterbacks.
Yeah, of course, the CBS has them picking Anthony Richardson, but I, I don't know, man. I mean, look, I mean, if you can build the right offense for him, maybe, and I'm obviously physically he is gifted, but as an NFL starting quarterback, I just don't know. I just don't know.
And you saw how much struggle Baker Mayfield and Sam Darnold had there.
Yeah.
So I don't know how much Anthony Richardson is going to be better than those two quarterbacks, which were number one, and number three picks in a draft.
And Frank Reich, I mean, he didn't do well in Indianapolis. He couldn't get any of those quarterbacks to play well in Indy. So I just, I'm not sold. I'm not sold on their head coaching decision. I'm not sold on what sounds like some of their quarterback decision. It's going to be fascinating to watch for sure. But I think the most juicy piece of news right now in the NFL comes from our good friend, the great ayahuasca drinker, the great retreat haver, Aaron Rodgers, because apparently he is out of his retreat, and apparently he has brought the Jets out. Literally, the New York Jets are in California right now, meeting with Aaron Rodgers, and apparently Rodgers might go to the Packers and demand a trade to New York. He is done with sleepy town, small Wisconsin. He wants all the smoke of New York City. I mean, just imagine this from a media perspective. Like Aaron Rodgers in New York.
I just want to say one thing though. How desperate he wants to copy Brett Favre's career. How much he want to beat Brett Favre? Like,
Or
it's
Tom
like,
Brady.
no, I think more Brett Favre. He's like he has the same almost same trajectory. He starts as this very flashy quarterback, has struggles at the beginning, won a Super Bowl, but by the end of the tenure, feels that he wasted talented on playoff fallouts, but really had really great regular seasons. And Brett Favre always talked about retirement, not retirement. Then he went to the Jets, and then he went to the Vikings. And even Colin Cowherd was saying, oh, the Vikings are gonna get Aaron Rodgers after 2 years. I don't think so. I think they're still gonna probably keep Kirk Cousins around, especially with that contract. But I think Aaron Rodgers wants to go to New York because he wants, with all the comparison with Brett Favre aside, I think Aaron Rodgers wants to prove that he can win in a big market. He probably tired of boring Wisconsin. He wants to, and imagine if he wins in New York, he gonna win. He's gonna be probably the most talked quarterback since Eli Manning.
I mean, especially for the Jets haven't won a Super Bowl since the late 60s with Joe Namath. I mean, he would be a hero to the Jets if he got them a Super Bowl. But let's just think about this for a second. So first and foremost, the talent that he would have around him is phenomenal. I mean, just look at the wide receivers. You have Garrett Wilson, a young receiver, a great talented receiver. Corey Davis, who is still a very solid receiver. In the running back field, you have Brees Hall, who before his ACL was maybe the best rookie running back in the league. I mean, he was phenomenal. You have a really good young O line. Uh, the only their problem last year was quarterback. I mean, that was their whole problem because defensively they were really good, especially with Sauce Gardner, who was a top 5 corner in the league as a rookie. I mean, just unbelievable. I mean, the talents that the Jets have, and I think Robert Salah is a great head coach. Um, he did as well as he could without having a true quarterback, and the Jets are a better position now than the Packers are to win. The problem is the Jets are also have a way harder path because you got the Buffalo Bills and the Miami Dolphins in that division, who are both loaded as well. I mean, the Patriots have talent, but I think there might be they're a step behind right now in that division, and then the rest of
Especially,
the AFC.
especially don't forget the Patriots. They had a little bit of controversy in terms of quarterback. Remember fans chanting Bailey Zappi, not being fans with Mac Jones. People tend to forget about that.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, Mac Jones. He's got Mac Jones reminds me of where Daniel Jones was last year. Now Daniel Jones is demanding $50 million, which I I don't think he's earned that. I mean, I just to be frank about that, I don't think he has
Yeah.
earned.
Oh, I don't know if he's earned it, but he's getting it. Giants signed Daniel Jones to a 4-year contract. So they
He's
announced
getting
today.
40 million a year.
Yeah,
What? I mean, okay, he had one decent season. He had one decent season. I
oh
mean,
boy.
he had 3,200 yards. He threw for 15 touchdowns. He's getting paid $40 million a year, and he threw 15 touchdowns.
Yeah, I guess the
That's like 1980s stat line. I mean, what in the world
and it's so
are the
funny
New
that
York Giants doing?
and it's so funny in the New York Giants website in the uh news about the Daniel Jones, they really highlight the Vikings game. They really highlight that game.
Yeah, so you're gonna pick the one game that like, oh, okay, he played well in that game. Uh,
I mean, Brian Dable. I mean, what he really wants to work out Brett Daniels. It's like I can make him Eli Manning. It's like I guess it was a really Brian Dable decision because as you remember, I remember Daniel Jones had problems in the offseason last season. He was doubted inside the organization, and now he got a 4-year, $40 million contract.
I've got to just see the. I'm looking at Twitter right now. Urinating Tree says, "I know Giants fans like Daniel Jones now, but 40 million a season—that's a bit rich, don't you think?" Um,
Congratulations to the Giants. They're gonna find themselves in the same hole as the Dallas Cowboys have because literally it's almost the same contract the Dallas Cowboys gave Dak Prescott. 4 years.
I mean, someone pointed this out. The Browns are paying right now Deshaun Watson 46 million a year, so just 6 million more a year than Daniel Jones. Um, I, I just don't. I just don't get it. I am so. I mean, okay. The real question here: when's Lamar Jackson getting his 40 million? Because if Daniel Jones is worth 40 million, Lamar Jackson should be worth like 45.
But Lamar Jackson today, there was a statement from the Ravens organization today about Lamar Jackson that says that they have not yet reached a long-term deal with Lamar Jackson, and they will use the franchise tag. I think it's gonna be the non-exclusive franchise tag, but they're franchise tag him. So they're like, we want to keep you, but we don't like. How crazy is Daniel Jones signed a long-term contract and Lamar Jackson franchise tag? What world do we live in?
Yeah, I mean it's crazy how 1 year can change the conversation. I mean, 2 years ago, I would have told you Ryan Tannehill was a franchise quarterback, and now I want us to trade up to get Bryce Young, but
In
that's
this,
not going to happen.
you know what this Lamar Jackson with the Ravens and Daniel Jones with the Giants show? You really need to play your best on your last year of your rookie contract. That's why it matters. Because Lamar Jackson's had outstanding years, but this year he struggled. He got injured. So Ravens were skeptical and franchise tag him. And Daniel Jones had 3 mediocre to okay seasons. And this season he, had his best season. And then he got the contract. I think that's the lesson.
Yeah, I think you really hit the nail on the head. I mean, think about what Mahomes did before he got his contract. I mean, just proved himself automatically, and like heck, even Watson, look at the contract he got, despite like not playing football for 20 months. So
but
it's
but I'm going more into these because now young quarterbacks are the cream of the crumb. Like all this new generation quarterbacks that are coming in, they're playing right now or they're going to play, like CJ Stroud or Bryce Young or the ones that are what this situation between Lamar and Ravens and Daniel Jones with the Giants shows that you can play decent, okay, in the first 2 years of your contract, but you really need to play outstanding on your last year of your contract to get that long term deal. That's what the situation clearly shows. Because Lamar Jackson was the MVP of
you know which quarterback I'm really fascinated to see what happens to him in his last year? Tua. I am super fascinated to see what happens.
Tua seeing the situation like, boy, I really need to play. Because if he doesn't, he's gonna get franchise tag. And he's been
Yeah.
struggling with injuries. Now, Lamar wasn't.
See, so 2020 was his first year. I'm trying to figure out when that first 2023. So like 2020 would have been the first one to. So this year should be the final year of his rookie contract. So yeah, this is Tua's last year of the rookie contract. So there you go. That is a yeah, as you said, Tua's got to be healthy. I think Burrow's already signed an extension, if I'm not mistaken. And what about Herbert? Has he signed an extension? Let me look at
I
this.
I haven't. I don't see anything about Joe Burrow signing an extension. The last news that I saw was the Bengals GM says conversation with the Pro Bowl quarterbacks is still ongoing. So he's gonna give a hard time probably of the Bengals because the Bengals is very kind of cheap organization. So I don't. That's also interesting point. I think Herbert's gonna get a big contract because he's improving year by year. But the Tua situation, that's true. Like, what decision Miami's gonna make out of this?
Yeah, so like all the 2020 quarterbacks are going to be up this year, I think, for new contracts. So I think about it, it's basically usually about 4 year contracts for those new quarterbacks. So it's going to be super fascinating. I'm trying to think, who are the 2021 quarterbacks? I can't remember off the top of my head who those were because I know Zach Wilson was one of them. And
Oh,
obviously,
Trey Lance.
yeah. Oh yeah, and yeah, you had Mac Jones and Justin Fields. So yeah, Trevor
I
Lawrence
think
is going to get a big one, but
I think Mac Jones gonna. I think Mac Jones is definitely gonna get franchise tagged. I think I
Justin Fields, that's fascinating because Chicago really likes him right now, and I think they can build around him.
yeah,
The
that's
question
true.
is the health.
The question is the health.
Yeah, but that's gonna be fascinating. I could see a situation. I think Tua is very fascinating. I think Herbert. I wouldn't count that out because yeah, I think the Chargers will do everything in their power to keep him. But from Herbert's perspective, you think about the Chargers and just how cursed that franchise is. You saw what happened to Philip Rivers, And I think if you're Herbert, I would be getting a little concerned about being the next Philip Rivers. And maybe, just maybe, when I get to the end of my contract, maybe I find a way out.
So I'll be interested to see what, especially the Chargers, the Dolphins, and even the Patriots are going to make out of this, you know, decision in terms of signing long term or not to their quarterbacks.
Oh, yeah, it's going to be super fascinating to watch. Um, so, right now, there is a lot of discussion, just kind of pivoting to college football real quick, about when the SEC adds Texas and Oklahoma next year, what the scheduling model is going to look like. And perhaps the biggest controversy is Alabama and Nick Saban are complaining about what they might have. So this is what each team right now might get. So well, apparently Greg Sankey is circulating this around the league. He's saying Alabama would get Auburn, Tennessee, LSU. Arkansas would get Missouri, Ole Miss, Texas. Auburn would get Alabama, Georgia, Vandy. Florida would get Georgia, South Carolina, Oklahoma. Georgia would get Auburn, Kentucky, Florida. Kentucky would get Mississippi State, South Carolina, Georgia, so on and so forth. Tennessee would get Vanderbilt, Alabama, and South Carolina. Um, in particular, Alabama's complaining because their trio is Auburn, Tennessee, LSU. And they think that's unfairly difficult. Um, what do you think of some of the rumored SEC models going around right now? And honestly, I'll say this from Tennessee's perspective: Vanderbilt and South Carolina, more often than not, those are games we're going to be favored in. But I really hate we're losing the Kentucky game. We're losing Georgia. We're losing Florida. Those are three of our most important rivalries that would no longer be playing every single year.
So now this pod's going to be a fixed pod over the next few years about like fixed teams they're going to play every year, and the other's going to be rotating.
That's correct. So you'd play the same three teams every single year. You'd play one group of six each year, and then you'd rotate and play the other six the next year. So you'd play each team once every 2 years at the minimum. But still, I mean, if we're not playing like Kentucky every year, I mean, that just doesn't feel right, you know?
Yeah, that's true. Like I feel that, and now we're not gonna have divisions anymore, which is sad. I still think you could have still keep divisions. I only would have moved one team, which was Arkansas to the east, and then you fix, and then you move Arkansas to the east, put Texas and Oklahoma in the west. Problem solved. Everybody happy.
Yeah. So, because one thing some people mention, with the whole South Carolina deal is you could have Tennessee play Kentucky every year and Kentucky play or South Carolina play Georgia every year, but then South Carolina would have to play Florida, Tennessee, and Georgia every single year, and that would be unfair to them. And that's our most historic rivals. And I'll say this: I mean, who came to our rescue for the past 20 years when Tennessee has had to play Florida, Georgia, and Alabama every single year? And those three were three of the best programs for the past 20 years. And then we're shuffling around schedules to keep things more, quote, fair and balanced, which, by the way, I don't think you can really do because you don't know who's going to stay good and who's going to fall off, you know? Um, it's a crapshoot every single year because you don't know who's going to be a good team. Like, who saw Tennessee being a top 10 team last year? You know? I don't think any Alabama fan thought last year they were going to come to Neyland and lose. So, I think, complaining about schedules is a waste of time because inevitably your team's going to have the chance to go out there and win those games.
Oh yeah, I think Nick Saban is not a big fan of having harder schedules. He's known for put this cupcake teams, especially before the Auburn game.
Yeah, and what's interesting too, if you really think about it, if this happens for Tennessee, I think it establishes Tennessee Alabama as the premier rivalry on the Tennessee schedule. because no longer, because I think for a long time we've debated, is Tennessee Alabama the bigger game, or is Tennessee Florida the bigger game, or is even Tennessee Georgia the bigger game? Clearly, it would be Tennessee Florida or Tennessee Alabama at this point.
But I don't think we can lose the Tennessee Florida game. That's a rivalry. Like Tennessee, like the trio be Alabama, Tennessee, no, Alabama, Florida, Vandy. The trio.
For me, I thought it should be Alabama, Kentucky, and Vanderbilt. I think that would be the three that would
You
make
can't
the
take
most
Florida
sense.
out. You can't take Florida out.
Yeah, but the problem with Florida is you got to do Florida, Georgia, and then I would do like Florida, LSU, and just with the if you're going to do this whole three permanent opponents, unfortunately, we're going to have to sacrifice one of them because we have to keep Vanderbilt, which is honestly here's I would get rid of Vanderbilt personally. Like that game to me means nothing. They're not a highly relevant football program, but they're the in-state rival, so the SEC is going to force us to keep them, which sucks, but that's just the way that
But
works.
for Florida, it will be Tennessee, Georgia, and I would say
I'm really hoping if we have both if Florida and Georgia are both off the schedule every year, I hope maybe we have Georgia one year and then have Florida the opposite year, so we at least get one of those games. Because imagine if they're both the same year, then there's going to be every other year you don't get to play Florida or Georgia, which I think would just it would. I can't imagine a fall where we don't play Florida.
yeah,
Or we don't play Georgia.
yeah.
That's
Florida. Oh my God, so hard. Because
man, that is
well, we
wow.
got like you're gonna have to keep Vandy. It's like you guys in the both because those in-state rivalries are like what makes the last regular season week. You know, Ole Miss is gonna be on Mississippi State and vice versa. Auburn, Alabama, and Tennessee, Vandy. Like that's the hard part of having an in-state rival, which has been in the bottom of the league compared to Alabama, Auburn, which I know Auburn right now is on the same level as Alabama, but they sometimes keep competitive, and Ole Miss and Mississippi State, because the Kentucky doesn't have that problem. Their in-state rival are in the ACC. So is Florida. So is South Carolina. So is Georgia.
Yeah, it's. I mean, there's going to be some really hard rivalries here that we're going to have to lose, and that sucks. But
That's why
maybe some new ones will be created.
that's why if Greg Shankly, I don't understand why Greg Shankly doesn't embrace my idea of moving Arkansas to the east and put Oklahoma and Texas in the SEC West, and everybody's happy. We don't lose anything.
Yeah, but then, well, I guess you could still do the whole, you would have 7 division games and then play one permanent from the other division, but you still probably would lose something in that. But I don't know.
You know what you
it's
lose?
difficult.
A cupcake game. You would lose a non-conference, which literally has been a cupcake game.
Yeah. But I'm just very curious to see, very, very interested to see how
but but that's the thing. Like, why? So you're not embracing a 7-team division because teams still want to keep the non-conference joke games.
Yeah, I agree. But thankfully, starting next year, we will have 9 conference games, and it's going to be super fascinating to watch how this unfolds. Really quick, World Baseball Classic starts tonight with Cuba and the Netherlands. I believe the U.S. plays on. I don't see them on. They play Saturday against the UK at 10 p.m. on Fox.
English rivalry.
Oh yeah, kind of like the soccer.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking about. I mean, in soccer was tied, so we'll see what happens. In baseball, it can't end in a tie.
Exactly. You cannot end in a tie. Really quick, in NASCAR, William Byron won a pretty uneventful race in Las Vegas. He was very dominant, won all of the stages, had max points. Great day for him in the 24 team. Biggest news of the week, though, was off the track because Chase Elliott, the most popular driver in the field, the driver of the 9 car, was snowboarding in Colorado before heading to Las Vegas and injured his leg. So he's out for 6 weeks, recovering from a snowboarding accident. They're trying to figure out who's going to drive the car in the meantime. Um, Definitely, though, hopefully he gets well soon. It'll be interesting to see if he can recover when he gets back and win some races to still get into the playoffs. I'll be curious to see who takes over that ride and if they can be competitive. Josh Berry came up for the Xfinity Series on Sunday. He did not race well, so I'll be curious to see who else they put into that car. Also, to transition into some soccer talk, we have CONCACAF Champions League.
Yes, they started this today with the round of 16. Upset the Haiti team, Violet 3-0 over Austin FC from Texas. So I'll call this an upset. Like Haiti is a country with a lot of struggles politically and economically, and 3-0 against Austin. That was it's still the first leg. They still have to play in Texas the second leg, but 3-0 is a big advantage. The other American team, the Philadelphia Union, 0-0 with Alianza from El Salvador. And currently, right now in Mexico City, the Tigres and the Orlando City are playing right now. 5 minutes in, still 0-0. So that's the American teams. Let me see. And I think tomorrow, let's see if tomorrow only one team from MLS play, which is Vancouver against Real España. Then the other and the LAFC on Friday plays Alajuelense. So that's the American and MLS teams in the CONCACAF Champions League. Remember, and the current champions are the Seattle Sounders. A little bit of MLS. Atlanta United got interesting result tie with Toronto. Charlotte FC lost 3-1 to St. Louis. Colorado and Sporting KC 0-0. FC Dallas 3-1 versus LA Galaxy. Austin 1-0 over Montreal. Chicago FC and New York City 1-1. Columbus Crew 2-0 over DC United. Orlando City Cincinnati 0-0. New England Evolution 3-0 over the Houston Dynamo. The Nashville SC went to New York, actually to Newark, New Jersey, 0-0 with the New York Red Bulls, and LAFC 3-2 over Portland. Currently, right now, the Inter Milan and New England Revolution tops the Eastern Conference, and the Seattle Sounders and St. Louis tops the Western Conference. And so funny that I was watching this Brazilian kind of like commentator. He's very on the internet called Rica Perrone, and he was like demolishing Inter Miami. I mean, they play a friendly with Vasco da Gama. They lost, but he was like still saying that MLS still light years away. I think they're getting closer every year. In terms of value, they're really close compared to the Brazilian league. But uh, I think I hope hopefully they can keep growing. I think, and from what I see, the Apple TV deal has gotten a lot of viewership, and in especially people on seats. You saw how Charlotte and Atlanta has been attract huge crowds.
Yeah, as I said last week, I mean, Atlanta United flags were up everywhere last week when I was down there in Atlanta. So those people are very much into their team. I haven't tried the Apple TV deal. I might need to look into it. Also, I do want to just say as a side, the Tennessee Baseballs lost tonight. They lost to Boston College 7-6 in 10 innings. So just a little score update that came in a few minutes ago.
So now transitioning to Brazilian side, we have still undergoing the state championships. I'm gonna start with Rio because Flamengo right now is getting deeper and deeper into crisis mode. They lost on the weekend against Vasco da Gama, one of their biggest rivals, 1-0 for Vasco. And Flamengo so-called fans, which basically are hooligans, went to the Flamengo training ground, kind of threatening staff and players. Vitor Pereira, still the active head coach, but a lot of people are calling for his head, saying that his personality is not fitting with the players. And the rumors that Tite, Brazil's coach from 2018, from 2016 to 2022, might be, as rumor for next Flamengo head coach. I think Vitor Pereira, I'm surprised to see the Flamengo's front office kept him despite the three losses in the Brazil Super Cup, the loss in the semis in the FIFA Club World Cup, and losing in the Recopa. But I think tomorrow's game versus Fluminense, which is another derby, another rivalry game, big rivalry game, a team that Flamengo struggles to win over the past 3 years, 4 years, despite being a dynasty they beat. They always struggles against Fluminense. I think if Flamengo lost like 2 or 3-0, I think Vitor Pereira is done. Even though they're gonna have to pay the 15 million reais buyout contract.
I'm kind of surprised they didn't already do it. I mean, losing at home last week to lose a third championship in a month, I really thought that was going to do it for Victor Pereira and Flamengo, but clearly they want more. So it's just very much an exercise in futility at this point. How much more can they possibly take? Do they have to go to the first division and get embarrassed on a national scale before they
Yeah,
fire him?
that I guess that's what gonna take because remember Paulo Souza, Flamengo's coach, they started last season. I think he survived all the way to the start of the Brazilian Championship and then got some embarrassing losses and then he was fired. But how much Flamengo's finances can take of getting buying out contract by after buying out contract? Because this is not going to be the first role that Flamengo is going to fire a coach then have to buy out the contract. Like how much which Flamengo's finances right now are in good shape, but a couple of years ago, Flamengo's in serious financial trouble, in a lot of debt. They had a really good administration and front office and president kind of solving that problem. But it just if they keeping on this path, they're gonna go back to that you know big crisis in not only on the field but off the field.
Yeah, they have kind of the Tennessee problem a few years ago. Like you can't pay out buyouts to everybody. Got to find some stability and maybe in a way maybe they should weather this storm. Maybe it's just a really bad season for them. But maybe if you let him, kind of operate the team for a year or two more, maybe he can find a way to get yourself back into more stability. Because clearly, right now, Flamingo, just from the brief observations that I saw, they seemed really tight of what I saw. I mean, they seemed really unsure of themselves when they were taking those penalties.
Yeah.
Um, that's just I don't know how much of that's really coaching. That's just trying to find the players who are able to go in there and find a way to win.
And it's still pretty much kind of the core roster that is kind of dynasty back in 2019, but they're getting older, and I don't know how much how productive they can stay. And on a side note, I wonder how Dorival Jr. right now is laughing. It's laughing because he was the coach who won the Brazilian Cup, who won the Libertadores with Flamengo, and his contract was not renewed because Flamengo thought he was going to go to the Brazil national team, which there was never a rumor about it. There was never an intention about it. He was literally let go because he did not have a good coaching brand, and they wanted to get the Portuguese coach. So he's laughing a lot, seeing like, "Hey, how good your guys are doing after letting me go."
I mean, it's always good to have that last laugh,
Yeah,
isn't it? I think about like Josh Heupel in Oklahoma. They fire their former national championship winning quarterback just for him to run off to now Tennessee and throw up lightning offenses. And Oklahoma was struggling to make a bowl game this year.
yeah, that's true. Yeah.
So
Uh, now in São Paulo State, Santos. Oh my God, they're terrible. They lost 3-0 to Ituano. They are out again for the third consecutive season. Not make the playoffs in the state championship.
So
How
disappointing.
so
I
disappointing.
mean,
So
like
disappointing.
literally, this is like the type of year where you really need to make a run for Pele, for your fan base's morale, and you lose 3-0. 3-0 to
in a
Italuano.
in a
Just
in a team that was fighting for relegation. I mean, they survived, and due to the kind of structure that is the Sao Paulo State Championship, they saved from relegation and they find themselves in the playoffs because they were in such a weak group that out of the four teams, two were qualified to the playoffs and the other two were relegated. So Group C in the Paulistão were very weak, but that is not an excuse. Santos plays so horribly. Defense is slow, terrible. And now the question is, Santos never been relegated, and that's something the Santos fans taking proud of. They have a saying on their stadium. They even have a big flag on it. It's like we're sometimes in second, but never relegated. Because in Portuguese, like algumas vezes em segundo, mas nunca na segunda. It's like they kind of rhyme. But I don't know how much they're gonna keep in the first division if they keep struggling and like year after year after year, and you know not finding good players. They got Lucas Lima back, which I thought they're gonna be a shine of hope, but he's still this talented player, but still very in like slow and disinterested player. So I'm curious to see what Santos gonna do now. They have a month off with no state championships to play. They have, I think, the Brazilian Cup next week, but the question is how much the fan base is gonna take year after year being so humiliated. I mean, not making a playoffs in your own state championship where you're playing with teams second, third, fourth division, teams with no division whatsoever nationally. And like in Santos group, one was in second division, one team was in the fourth division, and one team was in the first division, Red Bull. But you have a much bigger payroll and better players than Inter de Limeira and Braga and Botafogo, and the fan base are really really embarrassed right now, especially losing 3-0 to a team that was fighting for relegation. So
yeah. I mean, you have to give credit to Italuano though. I mean, they knew the stakes. I mean, it was a win or go home
yeah,
game, win or get relegated, and they came out swinging. I mean,
and
they had
also
only
funny,
scored 8 goals heading into that game in the entire tournament. So I'm
it
sure
was
that
and also funny, like you mentioned, like win or go home. It was like they went from relegated to qualify to the playoffs. That's the beauty of the Paulistão format. That you can go from like the bottom to the top. Like now they are 4 games away of being the champion. I know it's a long stretch. You're gonna play Corinthians on Sunday in Corinthians Stadium. I mean, the Corinthians is heavily favorite, but they're 4 games away from being the champion after saving themselves from relegation. So that's the beauty of Paulistão.
yeah. So
Group
what team ended up getting screwed because of
uh,
that?
São Bento. São Bento started week 12, qualified for the playoffs, and ended up relegated. They started in
Mm.
second place, and then they lost 3-0 at home to Bragantino. So they dropped to third place in their group. And then Portuguesa miraculously win on the road after making a bad tournament 2-1. And because of goal differential, Portuguesa saved themselves, and São Bento and Ferroviária went to Série A2, the second division. São Bento right now try to pull some shenanigans, saying that Portuguesa should lost the points because of week 8 game versus Corinthians because they play in Brasilia, not in their hometown, and the Paulista Federation said there's no basis for that allegation. The Federação Paulista said that they knew the Portuguesa was playing in Brasilia. They said they give it a okay, so there's not going to be any changes. São Bento and Ferroviária are relegated, and now we're going to have the quarterfinals, Palmeiras and São Bernardo, which is the number one team versus the number two team overall. Because of the, even though it's so funny, the system, like the best two teams in the tournament gonna have to face in the quarterfinals because they're in the same group. So they're gonna play on Saturday night in Palmeiras Stadium. On Sunday, Corinthians play Ituano and Bragantino versus Botafogo. And then on Monday, São Paulo are hosting Água Santa in Palmeiras Stadium because São Paulo Stadium are being used for the Coldplay show this weekend. So São Paulo is going to have to play in Palmeiras Stadium.
So they could not. So they I guess the Sao Paulo will not be playing in Paradise
Yeah,
this
I
weekend.
mean, I think I mean, they're gonna still have the home crowd. Probably 90% of the crowd is gonna be São Paulo fans. But it's still gonna be weird to see São Paulo playing in a green stadium, not in Morumbi. But I think it's for the best. I said it today on the radio show that we have here in Americana, that it's good to see teams kind of working themselves and being smarter rather than frugal. Like if São Paulo hosts a concert and then plays at Palmeiras Stadium, vice versa, because São Paulo Stadium and Palmeiras Stadium host a lot of concerts throughout the year. So they have to be smart to be like, hey, if we have this system of playing each other's stadium, our fan base are still be able to watch their teams because they're still playing the same city, but we got just gonna have to play in the different stadium. I think it's a smart move.
That's pretty cool, and definitely, I'm sure the Coldplay. I've always heard Coldplay concerts are really, really fun as well. Because
Yeah.
too bad their Sao Paulo's colors are not yellow, or otherwise that would really that'd really fit the mood. But I'm not any scientist there.
No, yellow. I only the yellow only yellow team in São Paulo State is Novo Horizontino, from what I remember. Because Palmeiras is green, São Paulo is red and black and white, Corinthians is black and white, Santos is black and white. Oh, Bragantino maybe, but no, it's more like red and red and white because of Red Bull. So, uh, so now we're
Yeah, the
gonna
only
have,
question is for Sao Paulo, are they going to have any magic to defeat Agua Santa in
yeah.
Palmeiras Stadium to move forward?
So São Paulo is dealing with a lot of injuries. Like Rogério Ceni is a depleted roster. He's dealing with a lot of injuries. So the question is, what kind of team like São Paulo is gonna have on the field on Monday? I mean, they're gonna have this week to rest, but I don't know. The one player that's been really playing really well is Galopo. He's, I think, for me right now is the best player of São Paulo right now, but I don't know how much São Paulo. Yeah, I think Agua Santa right now, I'm really happy for them. First time making ever the playoffs. And I watched this team from birth. I watched this team play their first ever professional tournament. Like, think about it. 10 years ago, 11 years ago, this team was amateur team, play in city tournaments, playing in kind of amateur leagues. And then they start their professional era back in 2013. I was there. I was the first like reporter for Agua Santa. And 10 years later, they're gonna play in their first playoff game in the state tournament, first division. And they're gonna next year they're gonna play their first national division, the fourth division. So I'm really proud of them. They have a
That's
lot of
amazing.
that's an amazing story. They have a lot of roots with their poor community. They have a lot of support with the community. You know, there were some rumors they were funded by the like the criminal organization that has never been proved. They've been so scrutinized, been so like called out, but they've never been proved about it. But you know, and I'm proud of them because they symbolize a city with dealing with a lot of troubles, with a lot of issues, with violence and gangs, and in the mid '90s they have a whole police brutality scandal, and now they finally have a team they can be proud of, and they're gonna have their biggest game of their life on Monday.
Yeah, I just I mean, it would be a very special. I mean, it's March Madness, right? I mean, the upsets
Yeah,
don't just have to be on the hardwood in America; they can extend
yeah,
down to the pitch, and the sky can be full of stars for Agua
yeah.
Santa.
Yeah, the holy water. We call the holy water team. So let's start. See, let's have a little to end our show. Now, since we picked the SC tournament, now we picked Paulistão. So started on Saturday, Palmeiras São Bernardo. Palmeiras number 1 team versus the number 2 team in the whole tournament. Palmeiras playing at home. São Bernardo coming off two losses. They were eliminated in the Brazilian Cup. They lost at home on Sunday. Palmeiras still undefeated. I think Palmeiras is going to win, but it's going to be a hard-fought game. I think it's going to be 2-1 Palmeiras.
I certainly agree, and it seems to me that Palmeiras is going to want to play it slow, right? Because San Bernardo, they are the highest scoring team, they are the most open team when you look at the table. But Palmeiras, I mean, obviously they're the experienced team in these tournaments. They've been in these situations before. So I would definitely trust Palmeiras to get it done.
So on Sunday, Corinthians, which is the 5th seed, are playing Ituano, the 8th seed. I think Corinthians definitely is gonna roll out. Ituano's team is terrible. They only made it to the playoffs because the other 2 teams they were competing against were relegated. I don't think it's gonna be an easy game, but I think it's gonna be a 2-0 Corinthians.
I would agree with that. It's the Mickey Mouse group, as we would call
Yeah.
it in the U.S.
The only issue for Corinthians is that Renato Augusto, a really key player, he's been playing phenomenal. He got injured on Saturday. I don't know. Probably is not gonna play. I think against Ituano it should be fine, but I worry about in the semifinals because if Corinthians might play a Sao Paulo on the road. So and right now winning is important too because you have, of course, you want to qualify, but the points are still being counted on. So for the semifinals, the seeds can change. Who's going to be hosting the semifinals?
Wait, what?
Well,
I've never heard of a structure where the seeds can change.
Yeah, in Paulistão, the seeds can change. Like, go to the standings. So right now, if let's say all the number one, let's say all the number one in the groups advance with wins, it would be Palmeiras versus Bragantino and Corinthians versus Sao Paulo. Palmeiras and Sao Paulo will be hosting. But let's say São Bernardo advances and Corinthians and Sao Paulo and Bragantino advances. Then São Bernardo will be hosting Bragantino and São Paulo and Corinthians and São Paulo Stadium. But the most interesting of all is that if São Paulo advances on penalty kicks, they only make 1 point because it's a tie. And if Corinthians advance with the win, then Corinthians will host Sao Paulo. So that's what is key in this playoff is you only, especially for Corinthians and São Paulo, they not only have to qualify, they have to win it to get to host the semifinals.
Okay, I'm gonna be honest. That's actually really cool. Like, it's not just about surviving in advance; it's about how you're surviving in advance.
Yeah, like let's say, like look at São Bernardo. He was the second in Group D, but even if he ties, he is gonna host a semifinal game. Even if he ties, advance on penalties, São Bernardo is gonna host the semifinals.
Yeah, and I see if Ituano were to somehow pull off an upset, they would go on the road automatically to the top team.
Yeah, Ituano is the only team don't have. Ituano and Botafogo are the only teams that don't have any chances of hosting a semifinal game. Because even Bragantino, I know Bragantino can't because their goal differential is so terrible. So only probably even if Bragantino advances, only Bragantino only will host if Aguas only they will host if Agua Santa and no, but because even if Agua Santa, Ituano, and São Bernardo advance, then Agua Santa and São Bernardo would host the semis. So only the teams who only have a chance to host is Palmeiras, São Bernardo, Corinthians, Sao Paulo, Agua Santa. That's the only teams because of the not the group qualifications, but the general like reschedule. Let me. I have a
What about the
take.
finals? How so? Like after the semis, is that hosted somewhere, or is that a
Yeah, yeah.
neutral site?
No. Then the finals is a two game. So the first game is gonna play in the lowest seed, and the second game, the decisive game, is gonna be the highest seed.
Okay, so it's like Champions League with the aggregates, like what we
Yeah,
saw today with Chelsea and Dortmund.
yes. That is on aggregate.
Yeah. So okay. So like is it like the new Champions League rule where if it's tied, they go to extra time and then they go to penalty kicks?
No, they only go straight to penalty kicks. There's no extra time.
Okay, that's interesting.
I was I'm just pulling up to you the Instagram of the Paulista Championship. Put on there the overall seeding. Let me check. Hold on. Here's the overall seed for you to understand. Here. Can you see?
Yes.
So that's the whole seed, and I think now you get it.
Wow, that's that's really convoluted, but it really does make sense.
So you see, like Palmeiras and San Bernardo, they were in the same group. So even they were the number one and the number two seed, they're gonna have to play each other because they're in the same group.
Yeah, I just wonder how Marisol and Guriani fans feel that they literally have two teams below them that are
Yeah,
in the playoffs.
yeah. Like imagine Mirassol fans see Ituano got qualified and but that's the format of the tournament. All 16 teams sign on. Like they knew before the tournament started that they're gonna have to play outside of their group, and they're gonna be and only the first and second in their group gonna qualify.
Yeah, but shout out to Lemire though, because I know you said they had like flooding issues and they were going through a whole bunch of stuff. So it's good to see them survive.
Yeah, it was a tough. They tied with Ferroviaria 0-0. Yeah, this was I like Inter Limera fans. They are relieved, but they are still feeling that this team could achieve more, especially with the payroll that they got was one of the highest they have in the last few years. But despite have a minus 14 goal differential, only scoring 4 goals in the entire tournament, they survived.
Yeah, that's what matters is finding a way.
But
To the next
Portuguesa
one.
for me was the biggest story of Survive. They spent the entire tournament in relegation zone. The majority of it in the bottom, in the last position, and on the final day, they survived.
So how are the Sal Bento and Ferroviaria fans taking their relegations?
Some Bento fans, as I said, they're a mix of anger because they're called what is the thing that you put like back and forth, like with the line. I don't know what the hold on.
Back and forth with the line.
Yo-yo.
Oh, yo-yo.
They call the yo-yo team because they go up, down and up, down and up. Like they were 2020 in 2020 second division, 2021 first, 2022 second, 23 first, 2024 second.
So they're kind of like like a Queens Park Rangers.
Yes, or Norwich, like up and down, up and down, up and down.
Hmm.
Yeah, so
So they're used to it.
yeah, they're kind of getting used to it. Of course, the fans and the media there feels that this could be the most damage of all because they're dealing with a lot of depth and a lot of issues on and off the field. So there's always that pessimism on the long term. I think they're going to be fighting for a promotion again. They always are a tough team in the Serie A too, but it's always tough too. And they were in a good spot a couple of weeks ago. Like on the mid tournament, they were even like, and they spent a good portion of the tournament in second place in their group. They were qualifying for the playoffs up until the last week. So imagine going from playoffs to relegation.
Yeah, that's just brutal. But we talked about that a few weeks ago. How it was setting up for it in Group B, and that's just
Yeah,
the way it worked.
yeah, that's a good point. So the playoff starts on Saturday. I'll be covering the Sunday and Monday games. So I need to see. I think all for me as I think we finished the pick. So we got both Palmeiras, both Corinthians. Oh, we have Bragantino and Botafogo. I think Bragantino is going to advance on a penalty kicks.
I'm going to go bold. I feel like there's going to be an upset somewhere. I'm going to go Botafogo.
Oh, I mean they're in a 3-game losing streak, but I don't know. I think you know it's probably it makes sense. It's a tough game. And last but not least, Sao Paulo and Agua Santa on Monday night. I think Sao Paulo's gonna have a hard time because Sao Paulo's always have a hard time with this kind of teams, lower seed teams, this kind of Cinderella stories. But I think gonna be on penalty kicks, but Sao Paulo advances.
You know what? I believe in the sky full of stars. Agua Santa.
Oh wow! So according to you, so you have Palmeiras and Botafogo, Agua Santa and Corinthians.
Yes, so that I guess in the semis I would have Botafogo at Palmeiras, and I would have
So
actually
so Agua Santa is gonna qualify on a draw and penalties or a win because that defines the seeding.
I'm going to go on a draw. So actually, I would have Agua Santa at Corinthians.
So you're gonna have Agua Santa at Corinthians and Botafogo at Palmeiras. I would have Bragantino at Palmeiras, and I would have Sao Paulo at Corinthians.
Yeah. So we both have that Group B coming down to a draw.
Oh yeah, that's true. Yeah, the Group B, but I think it's gonna be interesting. I think it's finally playoff times in Sao Paulo soccer time. And last but not least, Neymar is out for 3 to 4 months. He got an injury last week, and he's not gonna be playing for PSG tomorrow when they face Bayern Munich. I hope he gets a speedy recovery. There were some nasty comments made by a former a France national team player called Jugari, saying he was good to see Neymar being injured because PSG can benefit a lot from. I think that's disgraceful. You don't want to wish no player injury, and I think that's very low key.
Yeah, and you just have to wonder like how much longer he's going to be able to play at a high level, because obviously infamously he got hurt back in the 2014 World Cup, and so it's not his first injury, and it feels like the time is running out for Neymar.
Yeah, especially that he again, it's like he was injured in 2 out of the 3 World Cups that he's playing. He's only played 43% of games in the PSG over the past few years. So I don't know. That's true. It's a good point. How much Neymar is gonna take it? It's a good point. I'm curious to see that. But that's it for Two Countries, Two Americas All Sport episode 67. For me, Gus Tomazeli down in Americana, Sao Paulo, Brazil.
I'm Nick Hill from Chattanooga, Tennessee, United States, and you've been watching the only American and Brazilian sports podcast. We discuss it all on both continents as we go straight into March Madness, both on the North and South American continents. Tournaments, brackets everywhere. And stay tuned next week for episode 68 because we are going deep into the weeds and we are going to break down some brackets next week and try to tell you who's making it to the Final Four. Stay tuned and enjoy your first full week of March. Have a good one.